So, hi everybody, welcome to the live stream. So I am joined by a bunch of my Patreon patrons and channel members as usual, and we've been just having a lovely discussion right before we went on the air about Nazis.
About how America could become the Third Reich.
Yeah, well, or maybe the fourth one, I guess. I mean, there's already a third one.
Convoy people.
Yeah, so that's a nice.
I am
Yeah, go ahead.
and we have a fellow Canadian in our midst. I do appreciate that because I'm rocking my favorite Canadian right here.
Hey, the first lady.
So
the first lady.
Shout out to whoever, Mr. Lord T.
Yeah, thanks. My actual tag is Shazy in the Askaways.
See?
Yeah.
Joining from the capital, Ottawa.
The capital city of the great nation of Canada. Yeah. I'm a stone's throw away from Washington D.C., so I can't. Almost capital to capital.
I'm in a former capital of the United States.
That's right. You're in the first capital, aren't you? It wasn't Philly the first capital?
Well, second, I think. New
York was the first capital. Yeah.
I'm capital of the fascist state of Florida.
I love how we've kicked off just a chain of talking about the capital related things.
I'm in California. Does that count?
Hey, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
California always counts, man.
The left coast.
Hey.
Left coast is best coast, baby.
Left coast is best coast.
Bingo. Hey, well, can I touch on that Nazi point again for a second?
Please go for it.
So, I guess it's known pretty much now historically that Hitler did, in fact, get his inspiration for the eugenics notion from America, right?
Yeah.
We're the
Second Thought had a great video about that.
Right. So, but I just don't think that's really recognized as fully as it should be. So in effect, we are the Nazis. We gave license to the Nazis. We export our culture, right? That's what we do as America, right?
Like the phrenology and stuff like that.
Given the fact that he also modeled the concentration camps off the Indian reservation system.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we had
I don't know if you can exactly account it to America's exporting of its culture back at World War II times, though. I don't necessarily know that our culture was quite so pervasive. Now, other countries certainly modeled their behavior after ours, but as far as
his friendship with Ford made it automation definitely increased.
Yeah,
that's where he got that iron or the the bronze award or whatever.
Yeah,
in their letter writing.
We had our own reckoning because there were a lot of child mass graves found in Kamloops in British Columbia. And I've had this discussion with a lot of fellow Canadians who are not comfortable that to live in a genocidal colonial country, right? Like they've always grown up believing that they were the good guys and a member of the free world and all that. And it's very hard for some people to accept that.
Yeah, it's tough where we were about 25 years ago.
I was just gonna say it's tough to accept that there really is no clean place. Like it's not like, well, I can just move to Canada. They don't have that history. Well, no, they do. In a different way, but they do. You can't really escape from it. You just you have to reckon with it.
Especially also, Canadians take a lot of pride into believing that the rest of the world loves them so much, and they love to compare themselves to Americans that, in contrast, the world majorly hates them. So they don't like being considered in the same category as genocidal Americans, right? So,
well, and I can't blame them.
No, I can't either. I mean, if you look at,
I also don't like that.
I think as Americans, particularly as people who are paying a bit of attention. After we came, certainly there are people who knew this before the end of the Cold War, but once the Cold War kind of ended, it creates a more, it should create more introspection, because we were the one superpower at the time, particularly during the 90s. And that's where, as Americans, you know, those of us who are, again, aware of our history kind of much more became aware of the horrors in our own history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then there's that thing called human nature, though, that always kicks in, that fucks us over.
Especially the bit where you forget the things that you already learned. That's the part that's the most frustrating to me. That whole, you know, those who refuse to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Like if there is a truer axiom about the, you know, the arc of human civilization, I'm not sure if I'm aware of it, you know, like all of these things that we are experiencing today in the US specifically, but in the West in general, with the rise of far right movements and anti-immigrant movements and all these things. I mean, we've been through all of this before relatively recently, like, I mean, not within most of our lifetimes, but, you know, within the last century. Like we know all this has happened before. We know this, we know where this is going and what this is going to do. And yet
we don't care.
Here we are.
And we don't care.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more than that. I think it's a deliberate, by certain sectors, created of certain narratives.
Oh yeah.
I call it the gray swerve. It's like, I feel this way. This is the problem. We should do something about it. But we can't really talk about the problem because we actually support the systems that have the problem. So we got to invent conspiracy theories and all that too. You know? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the corollary, the thing to add on to those who refuse to learn from history is those that intentionally try to keep people from learning history. Yeah. Their intention is to repeat the darker parts of history.
Mm-hmm. A sort of cognitive space my older anti-vax brother loves to go into is like, oh, how do you know? Like, how do you know LGBT people are being oppressed? How do you know immigrants are being oppressed? Like, how do you know? Like, you're just relying on what the mainstream media is telling you. And I'm like, you know, at some point we have to come to objective facts in order to.
Or there are those who have benefited from certain mistakes in history are okay with those mistakes being made again, or maybe similar mistakes. You know, saying, and also, you know, history doesn't rhyme or doesn't echo, it rhymes.
Yeah. Well, and as far as like what Matt was saying a second ago about, you know, how do you know that oppressed people are oppressed? Well, they tell you. You know, like they tell you,
not with your boot on their neck.
Like, well, that's true, but I mean, like and what it really comes down to is the people who still question it, right? The people who would still seriously be capable of asking that question. How do you know that trans people are oppressed? How do you know that, you know, racism is still a problem? If you can seriously continue to ask that question, you either don't believe people when they tell you why it's still a problem, or you just don't think those people count.
Right. Well, they're the out group, and you're using the logical fallacy of demonizing the out group.
Yeah. There's another factor, guys. The very hierarchical way of seeing the world, you know.
Yeah. I mean, they also have alternative answers always, right? Oh, you talk about black people or minority. Well, that person hasn't worked hard enough, right? You know, they haven't worked hard enough. They didn't go to the right schools. They dress right, etc. If they follow the rules as I do,
they use the skewed facts and the numbers and stuff like that of over policed areas, and they're like, oh, look, there's more crime there. It's like, yeah, because you have more police there, and then there's gonna be more crime, and then it's a circular logic argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey guys.
Hang on a second, Isaiah. You've had your hand up for a little while.
Go ahead.
Well, it's kind of interesting that here in Florida, the governor here is basically saying that he's basically declaring a war on wokeness. But it's like it's like 75 years ago, you being Italian, I mean, you had to be woke also about people who didn't like Italians. I mean, there was a lot of Italian racism towards Italians in our country's history too that we don't really talk about. But you know, and it's like, but if you were living like 70 some years ago, you would like DeSantis would likely have to be woke to know where parts of the country he couldn't go to because he was Italian, but now he's you know. So
I think you raise a really interesting point, because one of the arguments that you see people making, you know, among Italian Americans, sometimes Irish Americans, like, oh, well, we had to deal with all this when we immigrated here and all this, putting aside the fact that that black people did not immigrate here.
Yeah.
Right.
But
right.
But let's talk about, we'll talk about maybe other ethnic groups and other marginalized groups, but they make that argument that we went through this, and it's the same damn people who don't want student loan forgiveness. So because if I went through something or my people went through something, well, God damn it, everybody else has to too. It can't be better for the next generation.
Oh yeah, it's the crab in the bucket mentality.
Well, that or exactly. their ladder pullers, like that actor who played Coach, the one who's like, I never got anything from the government, but he was, and he's like, it's like, go ahead.
Well, no, that wasn't even something that like somebody found out about him, right? Like he said that. He said, my family was on welfare, but also I never benefited from government help or something like that. Like he somehow has convinced himself that the government assistance that his family got didn't count.
Major case of cognitive dissonance by her.
Yeah.
And he wants to make it harder for other people who in his similar situation to get help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also like there was like a general like someone on the head of like one of the military that said that like if like student loan forgiveness like happens as a word too, that like their recruitment numbers will drop. They were saying the quiet part out loud that they were using the hey,
to funnel into the military
and you get like the college like degree and stuff like that as like
that's so ridiculous though. So I'm prior military, and the hoops you have to jump to, you can't have any injuries, you can't have a lot of things to join the military. That's not the right way to make that into a jobs program. Like, the equivalent would be like that, like the what's it called? The civilian corps. What is the one where they send people overseas? Peace Corps. Fund that the way you fund the military, so you have like something that's you're not carrying guns and blowing stuff up, and maybe you have more of an argument, but they don't treat it like that. They just have the military where you just open the checkbook and close your eyes.
Yeah.
And all that. But getting into the military is hard. Like even getting into the Army where basically you have a pulse and maybe 4 or 3 out of 4 limbs that work. And those send you to pound the ground, but that's just a bunch of bullshit.
Military service, so that was good.
I narrowly joined the military, but like I came forward and said, the recruiter told me not to tell you guys about my egg allergy, and there's no medical exemption for the egg allergy. So
I would.
They have the moment of truth where you basically all the injuries that you have that you're not supposed to have, because you're supposed to be perfect no matter what when you join the enlistment process.
You have you have a minimum.
I'm straight.
You have a minimum income requirement. I don't.
For the military, no. They'll grab homeless people, and as long as you graduated high school or you had like a GED of some sort, or you can get a GED. Because it's supposed to, the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, is graded on an 8th grade level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did took tests and I was able to like do that well. Well, some people were thinking that tests are not able to do it well, but since this was like back in 2000 when I like attempted to join the Army, I've heard that like they like lowered the standards since then, but it's been 20 years, so like I'm kind of not surprised.
Yeah.
But based on what I heard, I could be corrected on this.
I would have probably joined just to become an astronaut. It would have been a Coast Guard if I had a choice.
Yeah, but to do that, you'd have to be an officer. So there's a lot of people don't realize there's a dichotomy in the military. There's the enlisted; those are the guys who sign the dotted line, and you can go and you're a trigger puller. And then there's the commissioned officers, where you go to a minimum of 4 years of college. And then those are the ones who actually like receive the salutes and do all that stuff. And you're the ones who actually fly the planes and stuff like that. Because you're not going to get somebody with a high school degree or high school diploma, and you're not going to put them in the cockpit of a vehicle, despite what Call of Duty tells you. Like that is a commissioned officer who is operating that aircraft. It is not Bubba Gump. It is
aircraft.
It is a commissioned officer with 4 years of training and 6 years of training after that. Like it is not what you think. Like there's a big difference.
They wouldn't have a multi-million-dollar machine to someone who's just out of high school, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're maintaining it. They send you to 4 months of school on how to turn a wrench on that aircraft, and you can still damage a lot of it, but you're not flying it because that is even above beyond complicated.
Something Isaiah said a minute ago, to sort of pivot off of the military and to talk about the space program. That I had that disillusioning realization when I was young, when I first got into the space program when I was a little kid, watching the space shuttles take off and learning about the moon landings and all that stuff. And I thought, oh, I'd love to be an astronaut. And then I got to a certain point where I realized how incredibly smart you have to be just to even have NASA take a look at you. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, you have to have a degree, and military experience definitely helps. And, you need to have all of this stuff. And it's like,
and look at a lot of them are former officers.
Yeah.
Officers,
very many
or Air Force officers,
very many. It was a while. It was a long time before there was, an astronaut who actually flew. An astronaut who actually flew who didn't have military experience. Like that was considered almost a prerequisite.
Before the first non-Air Force or Navy person was on a.
I think one of the Apollo astronauts wasn't military, but I may be wrong on that. I think Harrison Schmitt was a civilian
scientist.
But I'm not positive. He may have had a military background, but he was out by the time he became an astronaut. I'm honestly not sure, but
in the military, even if he was prior.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Jim Lovell from like Apollo 13 and all them, he was a commander in the Navy.
Yeah.
A lot of them, because that's the pipeline. Like they go through their pilots, conventional aircraft pilots, and then they go above and beyond to start training because they're already there.
Officers.
Yeah.
Yeah, these aren't Lieutenant JGs. These are,
these are command flag level pilot or flying level officers. They're not. They're not. Stephen Timmy or Private Timmy.
Yeah, Harrison Schmitt was not in the military.
There we go. See that? You see that? Huh?
Got that off the top of his head.
Thanks,
right off the top of my head. Yeah.
And how, just bringing up the officer thing again, how wild is it that even today they still use the term for officers that comes back from when the only way you could be in charge of soldiers is if you had enough family money to pay in to the to the military. Like a commission was literally like a thing that was paid for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're good or not. You could still be picking your ass and.
If you look at the people who were officers in the on the American side of the American Revolution, I mean, most of them had no prior military experience.
Yeah, they hoed the vegetables.
I'm a general
now,
just like the men
who were in charge
of doing, but I'm going to be one.
And that the same thing happened during the Civil War. I used to think it was weird until I was slightly more educated about it and realized that that's just how things were back then. You'd hear the stories about, like, oh, so-and-so was a rich plantation owner and he raised a division and joined the Southern Army in the Civil War. And I'm like, he did what?
Yep.
What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh.
You can just do that?
You got to remember where it comes from, though. You think about back in the days of knights and kings and all that crap. That's literally if you were
you grab all your peasants and give them a hoe and a little shiv and here you go, guys, go run at that guy.
Well, the thing was basically it was part of your feudal duty. If you had granted me land, part of my job was if the king wanted to go to the wars, I had to provide myself, my retinue, and any soldiers that I could raise toward whatever war it was. So I was in charge simply by virtue of the fact that I had money, and so I could pay people to be
your infantry, your footman. Like Warcraft 3. You were the guy on the horseback, and then the guys running around on their feet. Those are your people.
One of my favorite
between you're a
legionnaire,
Caesars, and but then you've always got the other generals who are just there because they had the money. Yeah, and they just burn through like 40,000 men legions.
Yeah. The one of my favorite quotes from like what we're talking about, the Civil War generals that were essentially just plantation owners, was from Bedford Forrest, who was essentially the South Civil War's sort of Elon Musk sort of approach of just having enough resources. Like the secret to his strategy is, yeah, I just hired a bunch of guys, and he was like quoted as saying, "It's like, yeah, I get there the fastest with the mostest." Like the idea is like, yeah, I win battles because I send the most guys into the meat grinder.
Yeah, and now there's a bunch of people that still think he's a military genius, even 150 years later.
Well, for that matter,
he's got statues.
Now, Robert E. Lee was actually a trained military man, but he was a shit general too.
Yeah, West Point. Yeah,
you know, I just remembered. I don't know if it's exactly if it's Attila the Hun. It was somebody like that. My brain fucked so bad lately. But after like every raid, he would pick the strongest fighters from each place they took over and incorporate that into their army. There was one guy who apparently shot him in the chest with an arrow, and he survived. He's like, "Hey, you want to be one of my top archers? You gotta be pretty good."
I like your moxie, kid. You can have a job with me.
People nowadays have like this meritocracy view of the military, but it's really not.
Yeah,
that's a meritocracy.
Well, you almost kill the guy who led the opposing army, and he lets you join his army.
Now the best Confederate general was Longstreet. Yeah, he was actually a West Pointer also.
Yeah. Yeah, the level of romanticizing of Robert E. Lee is ridiculous. I mean, and again, by no means am I a scholar in military history, or am I an expert on what makes a good general or whatever. But
well, hell, the romanticizing of the military and like and violence and war in and of itself. You guys pass it. I read your book.
But like, I remember having arguments with people. Because, like where I live and where I grew up, I live in Western Maryland, and Civil War is everywhere around here. I mean,
it's still going on there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not just that, but he's at Antietam.
Yeah, like Antietam battlefield is literally a 10-minute drive from my house. Gettysburg is half an hour from my house. Like there's, Baltimore and DC and Philadelphia, and like there's a bunch of, it's American history central, right? And I remember having arguments with people when I was, years ago, someone who fancied themselves like a big, Civil War buff, and they would say, like, well, name a better general in the Civil War than Robert E. Lee. And I'd be like, Grant? And they'd say, well, how can you say Grant was better than Lee?
That gets under skin so much.
How can I say Grant is better than Lee? Because Grant
who signed whose surrender?
Because Grant beat him. That's how I can say he was better than Lee, because he fucking beat him. What the fuck are we talking about here?
I mean, the best answer is Sherman, just because,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Sure. I love Grant is the best, but Sherman is my sentimental favorite.
Well, that's the reason why when right wingers want to defend Confederate statues, I'm like, oh, well, it's all about history. Let's put up statues of Sherman and Grant and Stewart.
Just cover the whole. Just cover. We should
take down Confederate statues and put up like French.
I want a statue of Sherman every 2 miles along his march.
My thing is, hey, if it's about history, look,
hey, everybody. Everybody's talking at once.
Keep the Confederate statues up and put in Union statues next to them. Then it's
there you go. And make the Union statues like twice as big.
I still say French. Like put up French flags and say, "How fast can you surrender?"
Look, those statues are part of a revisionist campaign. Shortly after the war, they put those up in like every town that they could.
Yeah,
because people love statues. They love false idols and symbols more than the real thing, and it worked. It's lionized those freaking slave owners. Yeah. And the funny thing is that the statues themselves,
either during the post-Reconstruction era or the Civil Rights era.
Yeah,
they did not go up directly after the war.
Well, then they can use the appeal to tradition fallacy and say, "Oh, well, it's there, and and now it's a tradition, so we can appeal to that and say, why are you?"
Shapiro's bread and butter, basically.
I'm sorry, my long COVID, my brain fog is so bad that things like time blur together. But anyway, another thing you might notice about some of the statues that have been taken down, some of them would just crumple like they were made of caramel. They were very cheaply made.
Yeah.
Just like, quick, we gotta get these out at the end. It was like part of this movement, this huge campaign to change history in their favor. And it worked.
It was the know your place darky statue. That's what the campaign was.
The one of two times the end of Reconstruction where the essentially everything, all of the good things that came of the end of the Civil War were being undone, and then the second time during the Civil Rights Movement when during the Civil Rights Movement when they wanted to press that back down and they put a bunch of statues back up at that point.
Yeah. No, the point, Nick, was not to disagree with you so much as actually amplify your point that it was not. The point was that it was like so much later that it is revisionist history.
Well, here's the thing: there are people who, a friend of mine, he teaches history and he basically tries to say, well, don't look at history through a modern lens because blah blah blah. And he's like, none of us know if we lived back then, how we would have been, whether we would have been for slavery or master slavery or for this or for that. I'm like, oh, no, I know for certain. He goes, how can you know? I said, well, because my family, I'd be a slave. And he said, how do you know that? Because my family were enslaved, and I know their fucking names, and I got pictures of them.
Right.
So that's how I know.
Somebody
And
asked
then he was
you,
like,
how do you know?
Kind of, It's like, yeah, I know. In fact, I even know the name of the fucker who owned our family. So there. So that's how I fucking know.
Your own family knowledge of your history, which is, frankly, among, from my understanding, among the African American populace, is pretty rare to really to know kind of the history of all that. But regardless, if you're an African Black person in this country, African descended Black person in this country, guess what? If slavery was still in place.
Yeah, well, yeah. The thing is, there's a rare number of us. Like, I actually found that like one of my half siblings, like one branch of their line was actually free Blacks in Virginia, which is unusual. But again, it's like, and this is the thing. This is why I'm so passionate about it. I mean, I think most Black people are, but like once you actually find your enslaved ancestors and you know their names and you got some pictures of a few and you know the names of the slave owners and all this, it really personalizes it like way more than it ever did. Like when it was this kind of nebulous and kind of, like, okay, I knew it was the case, but I didn't know details. Once you know the details, it just really fucking sinks into you. Like, no, I know the motherfucker.
Yeah.
I mean, I traced mine back to 1638. And that was how the European records showed up.
And also, I want to circle back to the idea. Oh, we don't know about that. First of all, you read the history, you read people constantly supporting and making excuses for stuff like slavery. So they knew it was wrong, because you wouldn't make an argument in favor of something if somebody had a counter argument saying, well, maybe what you're talking about is not that great.
Well, especially like in one point he was trying to defend Jefferson. I'm like, no, look, it's not like Jefferson was a man of his time. He knew, he wrote that it was an evil, a moral. He said it was a hideous blot.
Yeah.
So yes, I can judge him by his own fucking words. He personally thought it was terrible, but he didn't give up the fucking practice.
And I think I think a lot of people make the mistake of confusing they got away with it with everybody thought it was okay. Right. Because I know and again, I'm not like a historical scholar. I'm just like a popular student of history, but there are so many different historical figures from all throughout human history. You can go back to, the era of like Caesar or Napoleon or whatever, people who, when we judge them by our modern standards, we look at some things they did and we think, oh, that was horrible. That was like an atrocity. That was a war crime, whatever. And there's always the instinct to say, oh, but that was, 1,000 years ago and standards were different and blah, blah, blah. But you will almost always find that there were people contemporary to those people who knew it was wrong and said so. And so it's not a matter of, well, things have just changed and we have all become more enlightened. It's like, no, even back then there were people that said, no, that was wrong. That shouldn't have been done.
It's not a matter of relativism.
Yeah.
But since history is written by the victors, we don't know those stories very often. Very often.
Yeah. And Isaiah, your hand's been up for forever. So sorry about it. It's hard to get a word in edgewise. What do you have?
Well, I guess if I could just go back to the astronaut thing, if we
please.
Yeah. So today is the anniversary of the Challenger explosion. Does anyone
Yes, it
have
is.
stories of where they were when that happened?
I remember I had been out shopping with my roommates at the time. At the time I lived in an apartment in Hagerstown and had roommates, and we had been out. We went to the mall or something. I can't remember exactly what we did, but I remember coming home and turning on the TV, and that's what was on TV. And I thought, oh my God. Yeah.
I was born in '89. I wasn't born yet.
Oh no, the Challenger. The Challenger. I mean, not the Challenger was '86. I mean
I was in school, and you're younger than me.
No, the Challenger. I was thinking of the Columbia. Sorry, I was thinking of the Columbia. The Challenger. No, the Challenger. I actually don't remember how I found out.
Oh,
I remember.
I was in school.
I was in school.
They actually called an assembly at school, and basically, because we were ostensibly going to be watching it, and I think they, but I don't think we were. But I remember they called us all into what was the gym/lunch room and had us sit down. And it was '86, so I would have been 9. So I guess third or fourth grade. And they told us what happened and all that. I remember the whole school together.
I was 5, not yet 6, because it was '86. My birthday's in May, so I was in kindergarten, and I had morning kindergarten. So I think and we didn't do like an assembly. Like our school didn't do the thing where everybody watched because of Kristen McAuliffe and everything. At least I don't remember that. I don't remember watching it live on TV. I remember finding out about it at some point after that. And I can't remember, I guess because I was so young, or maybe I blocked it out. I can't remember, but I can only imagine I would have been crushed by it because, even at that young age, I was a huge space nut.
Yeah. I was actively at that point, my parents were buying me books on the planets and all that.
Me too.
At that time.
Me too.
What grade were you in at the time?
I would have been 9. My birthday's also in May. So, I guess 4th grade.
I was a senior in high school, and I was.
What year was that?
I'm old, and I was in gym, and some kid comes running into the gym saying the space shuttle blew up, and I'm like. And of course, being a big geek, and again, be really into that. I'm like, well, which one? Because I'm like, well, there's 4 orbiters, not the space shuttle. And people are like, and everyone's like, the space shuttle. I'm like, no, but which one? And then
there's more than one, dude.
Today.
And then I forget it was either principal or vice principal. Came over the PA and was like, the space shuttle Challenger exploded and blah blah blah. And then it was just like we were all just like stunned. I was in gym and we were just like. Because I think it was like I think it was like 6th period gym, and I was just like, "What the fuck?" And we, I try to remember like after that, like not much happened the rest of the school day, because it was just like everybody was in a daze and nobody knew what the fuck was going on, and I just remember like people crying and because that's things we're all old enough to like really internalize and understand what was going on, because we're all
and also remember like back then the space shuttle program was really cooking. I mean there were launches so regularly that it was background noise. Like people didn't even really minded
could ask which shuttle because
it wasn't a big deal. Like there were so many launches a year at that point, and it was just a part of this is just what we do now. We have a space shuttle, and they launch it every month or whatever. And so
Challenger just ended that.
Yeah, and Challenger was the new one, or the newer one, and it's like it was now all of a sudden.
Our space programs never recovered. I mean, really never.
No.
Well, apparently Big Bird was supposed to be.
I should say, at least.
Broadly speaking, I also think the space program in the United States and the Western world as a whole was a victim of neoliberal politics, where it doesn't generate income for capitalist ruling class. We don't care.
Well, and I think the space shuttle rejuvenated it to an extent for a little while, but the Challenger disaster really put a big dent in that.
Was a nail in the coffin.
Yeah, Columbia was the nail in the coffin. But I mean, even after, I mean, there were people in the United States, even at the height of the space race, where after Apollo 11, they were like, okay, well, we're done now, right? We can just stop this. You know, because to them it was just, well, we beat the Russians to the moon. We landed on the moon. We did it. Okay, let's fold up this tent.
I don't disagree with that because actually the space shuttle brought a lot of value to the ruling class. But in terms of military, satellites and stuff like that, and in terms of civilian satellites and stuff like that, so it actually provided an enormous economic.
And the advancements that came out of the Apollo program can't even really be quantified.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's
why
you know,
from a neoliberalist perspective, it's a short view of neoliberal.
Especially when you
direct
compare
funding.
Especially when you compare their budget versus the military budget, and the technologies that came out of
there's return on investment there.
It's just I hate making that argument because that's like but yes, that is an argument that I've made to people before too. It's like even if you take
here's the thing though too, because one thing I've come to the conclusion of, and there's plenty of evidence to back it up, that nothing has a greater return on investment, well, except from education, than investment in technology.
Yeah,
because unlike durable goods their prices go up on an inflationary model. Technology gets cheaper in an anti-inflationary model. So basically, this phone,
you talk about Moore's law,
how many hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of a computer gear
is related
to 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's more.
In a capitalist-based society, that's true, yes. But humanitarian speaking, not so much.
Yeah, but which society do we live in, right?
Well, we need like antitrust, we need good competition, but that has to have a strong government regulation. You need to have multiple people competing. You can't have the monopolies that we do, because everything is pushing towards consolidation. And after a while, because we had Netflix at first, and then now we have it's fragmented, and then it's going to consolidate, and then it's going to fragment, and it's just we just need strong legislation that keeps it kind of right at that happy medium where you have multiple companies at all times, and it keeps it away from becoming a kind of a trust again.
Well, that's the thing, because consolidation is actually, even just say for someone who's a fan of capitalism, right? Consolidation is actually bad for capitalism. It makes the engines that make the market economy work fail to work when there's no longer competition.
Right. For somebody who's actually a capitalist, end stage capitalism is a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But the problem is though, the right wingers in the United States don't know that because they're fucking morons. And, they're fans of a system that they don't understand at all.
Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and not say that they're morons. And personally, I kind of agree with you on that. But let's be good faith argument and say that maybe that they don't understand, and just like when they're done manufacturing, then they push to sustainment, and they're like, okay, so let's start doing licensing as a service, platform as a service, and start charging you an annual fee. So look at like Adobe or something like that, where you used to own the software, but now it's every year you pay $230. Right. Look at video games. You used to own the media, but then now you have to pay, and you don't even own it. And if your thing goes away, you don't. Hey, sorry, my son just came in. Hey, buddy. Your data yammering in here.
And this is why I buy CDs. People are like, "Oh, you're a Luddite." No. I want to own the fucking music I paid for, and they can't take that away from me. If I buy media and it's
I don't want to rent it for an extended period. I want to have it. Yeah.
I mean, you can't get computer games like on the CD-ROM or DVD-ROM. Computers don't come with DVD-ROMs anyway. You have to I have to get an external DVD-ROM for my computer to get my DVD-ROM games onto my computer if I want to. But I still
buy physical games for my console systems.
Consoles make sense,
partially because I can get them cheaper than I can get the digital downloads, which is also bonkers.
Well, I'm a vintage guy, so of course I'm going to get my media on some kind of a hard.
Here's the problem. Here's
only Atari cartridges.
Here's why physical media only helps so much. Here's a game called The Crew. It's one of the best driving games. You go like all around the United States. They have like all these landmarks, all these slightly smaller versions of the famous cities and so on. And it's going to be dead in April. It's been up for years, and it wasn't sold as a subscription service. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to close this down someday. It was something you bought physical media of. You bought the CDs, and now those aren't going to work. It's basically going to send out a code that tells those to not play the game anymore. So even though this was sold to them as a good, they don't get to keep it. This would be like if you bought a car, and then after a few years, the manufacturers of that car sent a code that just like bricked it or melted it down.
Here's a question about that. Now about this code. Now, can you play the game offline? Like, if you disconnect your internet connection, can you play
No,
the game?
you can't. No. Nobody's pirated it or cracked into it, so it's just going to be dead soon. People who paid for that game are never going to be able to play it again. And again, it wasn't sold
before its launch.
And again, it wasn't sold as a subscription service. These companies are constantly pushing to sell you a good and then just take it back.
Yeah.
Lessons. That's nothing new.
Planned obsolescence, exactly.
The problem is that they're allowed to get away with it so much in the case of games because nobody takes games seriously. And there hasn't been like a legal precedent for this. There hasn't been a big case in court. And the law it doesn't evolve fast enough to keep up with the technology.
Because the people in government are generally technology illiterate, and they make laws based on lack of knowledge.
So unfortunately, these companies are going to get away with this until somebody finally makes a big case and explains to these judges, hey, they're selling you a good, and then just taking it back. And
there's a YouTuber who is go ahead. Sorry, I was interrupting somebody.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
There was a YouTuber who actually is trying to make a case against that, either here in the United States or Ross Scott. And that's also tied to another movement, which is the right to repair. With cell phones and even it's a very fascinating case because it's farmers and people who are techies who want to fix their own phones, and the farmers are saying, my tractor costs $15,000, costs as much as my house. The company can just deactivate it by
John Deere
firmware from satellites. And I'm like, I paid you. I put a mortgage on this vehicle. Talk about cars, which is very similar. Now they can do that with farm equipment. So talking about capitalism, especially capitalism, it's the snake that is eating its own tail while wrapped around your own neck.
And the problem is we now have an entire generation that are growing up with this being normal. And there's all this propaganda saying you need to get used to the idea of not owning your games, of not owning anything. Oh, Nick, great. That's going to be a healthy outlook to believe that we don't own anything that we buy. We're just granted the privilege of enjoying it for a little bit, and we should be grateful that these companies are so merciful.
Here's the huge irony of that, because one of the things that the hyper-capitalist fans argue against socialism is that socialism and communism is that that you own very little, that most things are public property, right? So now it's but and you wouldn't know you wouldn't be able to own your house or this and the other things you basically want to do that the same way but through a hyper capitalist method.
It's also a straw man argument.
Instead of everyone owning it, it's these four guys.
Tying this into electoral politics, though, one of the things that worries me about this situation, like what you're describing, is you have a whole generation that's gotten used to this. And I think one of the situations that we're dealing with now as a society, we now have a generation of young people who literally and correctly, frankly, for every one of the elections, at least for their adult lifetimes, and for the younger among them, their entire lifetimes, has been a critical, and you cannot, you can't waste your vote on this election. And it's, it's one of those the end of the world is coming, when literally
it is.
It has been.
Essentially.
Whereas, when I was a kid, when you were voting Reagan versus Mondale, when I was growing up and watching that, I don't think anybody was looking at that going,
in retrospect, it was very existential, but
it was.
20,
it
right?
was, but it was
because
not.
Reagan messed up a lot of stuff.
Oh, of course.
No, he fucked it up.
You can say fuck.
Yeah, you can. You can say fuck, buddy. You can say fuck. But yeah, and that's the thing is it's the difference
how do you
between
get kids to engage when every time it's the most important.
Well, especially when, and I actually have heard people when I've said that, or been in a group of people saying that, and they're like, "Well, that's what they told me last time." I'm like, yes, because it's increasingly true.
It's still true
for a long time and getting worse, you know. And it's hard to convince people that. Especially if they're new to the whole thing, like how could this possibly be the, you know, like, well, because you see, about 40 years ago we fucked up and we've been fucking up ever since, and it's been getting worse.
Yeah, and now it's getting worse at an ever increasing speed. You know, it's not like, I mean, because Reagan fucked a lot of stuff up that we are still dealing with to this day. George W. Bush fucked a lot of stuff up, but yeah, exactly. Like. Reagan was a terrible president who did a lot of really terrible things that we're still dealing with. But if Reagan had lost in '84, Reagan would have left.
Right.
Reagan would not have said, "No, I didn't. Actually, it was a fraud, and we have to storm the Capitol and stop the Capitol." Like, Reagan would have said, "Okay, I lost. The election is over.
Like George H.
I'm out."
Yes, you left. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly, like that. So that's really one of the big differences. It's not so much a difference in the policies or the things that they want to do. Like the Republican Party has always had an incredibly destructive goal as far as how it wants to run the country. But until recently, you could at least trust that if you elected the other guy versus a Republican, the Republican would say, "All right, I admit defeat. I concede."
And you had the opportunity to try to undo what they did.
Yes, exactly.
Well, one still led to the other, though.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't have Trump without Reagan.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, no question. Yeah. I think the issue is much more that you can, as much as you may disagree with him politically, Reagan did believe in our overall system of a peaceful transition of power.
Right.
Which is, I think, to most of us, the core of what
I think politically that's been the most frustrating thing for me about Biden, is that he still thinks that's the way it is, or at least publicly that's the way he acts. Maybe privately he's a little smarter to things, but like whenever he makes, you know, he always specifies MAGA Republicans, and I'm like, okay, that I mean that's better than nothing, but dude, they're all like that.
And he keeps saying that how much he loves Republicans, and that some of his favorite Republicans. I'm like, you're not supposed to be friends with them. Fight them.
And it's exactly. It's like it's not the 80s anymore, man. It's not the 80s anymore, man. They're not agreeing to the same rules as you. You could always say like,
learn the lesson. Learn the lesson Lindsey Graham taught you.
Well, then that's the problem. He's been there for 50 plus years, so he remembers the days when, you know, they were just like the loyal opposition, right? And like those days are long gone.
Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, they liked each other. Like, okay, yeah, maybe they did. That was 50 years ago, man. It's not like that anymore.
Back when they were rivals and not actual enemies.
Before they were actually trying to kill each other.
Well, that's why I don't know if you saw I think it was Gavin Newsom like took Bill Maher to task because Bill Maher still tries to pretend he's on the left in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. And this whole thing about how we have to talk to them. I'm like, I don't have to talk to people who are literally wishing and praying for my destruction.
Yeah.
Like I'm not ever going to be friends with those fucking people. And like I've told people that I've unfriended over the years, and like, oh, you would end a friendship over a simple disagreement. Like,
yes.
Simple disagreement is like whether or not pineapple belongs on pizza.
Exactly. Whether 2 was the best of the trilogy.
It was whether or not LGBTQ people have rights or women have rights over their own bodies and shit like that.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental difference of values.
It's a matter of values, yes.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. Renegade kind of made that comparison where like what pizza topping you like is an opinion, like.
And that's not a lot of that's the situation.
Beyond values.
Hell,
it's also
even if it was
I've had friends.
Even if it's like what should we tax and how much? Okay, that's a debate you can have, right? That's that's a matter of where you draw lines. It's not that taxation is theft. It's like, how much should we tax and who should we tax and to what degree and all that. That's a reasonable debate, but not like, hey, should those people have rights over their own bodies? I don't know. You know,
let's have a discussion.
Yeah, I'm all for small government unless you want to do something with your own body, in which case then I got to squeeze the government in there.
Yeah, I really love Steve Sar's video about some things just aren't up for debate because it really is that simple.
Yeah, well, and it's like, I know for me in my personal life, if I have someone that I've been talking to and I discover that they do think that certain things like that should be up for debate, that's usually a sign for me to start nudging that person out of my life. Because it's like, if you're the kind of person who thinks like, well, I mean, maybe there's a good argument for not letting gay people have equal rights with straight people. Okay, well, you have fun over there having that discussion. Life's too fucking short for me to involve myself in that with you. Okay,
it's just the whole point. Like I was saying, sometimes it's not even just values. It is like, just to speak for myself as an Iranian American. Sometimes that person has a political view or supports a politician, and they might not agree with all their policies, but they support a politician who is actively harmful to me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's another. Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
I still see, like, unironically, this sounds like dialogue you would see in a Kevin Smith movie or something. But there are people who, to this day, will say, well, why would I care about them? I don't know them personally. That doesn't affect me. How could people still be this dense? Well, You're supposed to care about people you don't know. That's what it's
right. Let's put that up, Nick. Because I got into an argument with somebody a few months ago about the vaccine, about the COVID vaccine. Yeah. And this person said,
that was your first mistake.
Very flippantly, well, but look, COVID really only affects people with all these comorbidities. I'm like, oh, like obesity and diabetes. And hypertension, like me. And like, I didn't mean no, you did. You just didn't expect somebody to be in your face confronting you over it. Like, literally all the things you're talking about describes me. You just didn't think about it. So you didn't give a shit because you didn't think you knew anybody to apply to. Now you're looking at somebody who I've had COVID and it was pretty, I was vaccinated before I got it, and I'm pretty convinced that based on the severity of what I had, that I probably would have been killed or permanently harmed by it if I hadn't been vaccinated. So you just didn't expect that somebody would be in your face telling you that you're a fucking idiot and you're callous and you're dehumanizing because you only care about people you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And my brother
used the same fallacy. Like, he's like, oh well, I don't know anybody personally who caught COVID. I'm like,
okay, that's just a lie, but
that's true. You probably do, though.
Given how many people, that's impossible.
Like, I'm like the unicorn that never caught COVID. I promise you know people that caught COVID.
Yes, of course.
This might make me a radical and a freak and a weirdo, but I believe you should care for people that you don't know.
Yeah.
I think people who only circle the wagons, only care about their family, their neighbors, maybe a couple people around town, they're weird.
Okay.
I understand that's how most humans probably lived in the hunter-gatherer times, only caring about their village, whatever. But we're not in that world anymore.
Well,
we are a large collaborative species, and it's weird if you don't care about somebody just because they're like.
That's the main difference between right-wing thinking and left-wing thinking. Right-wing people can be very compassionate with people they know, with people they care about, but the problem is that their village is very tiny. They're very insular. And basically I found the differences on, people on the left is their village is
the whole world.
Everyone.
Not the entire
country. The thing is, they think that if you do care about other people, that if your village circle is big, then you're the fucking weirdo. You're the one with something wrong up here. That's what they think.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, it's like even people who are like, my mom has never been a right winger by any stretch, but in the 90s, she was not pro-gay rights. Neither was my dad. My mom, ironically enough, had a hairdresser who she became good friends with, who was gay, and that was it for her. Like,
because now she knew somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just get to know somebody. You're like, and that just tickles you. Like,
I
why should Rob not be able to marry who he loves?
I did mention to a few of my family members that I'm friends with transgender people, and I was able to like steer them away from the anti-transgender stuff, and that's literally what it takes. Just something that they know trans people.
Well, because I think what happens is what happens is, and like it makes it real to you. Yeah, you know, they're no longer like theoretical people. It brings it on, and also like, and I wish it wasn't this way, but I think this is just the way it is. Like it makes it normal to you, and the concept of normal has all kinds of problems associated with it. But like if you've never met a trans person, or you've never been, you know, and then you actually are in a,
I would say it makes it not scary.
You realize, oh, they're just people.
Right.
And that's such that's such like an obvious realization to have. And you would like to think that that's not even necessary, that you would know that already. But for a lot of people who think that way, who are like, oh, you know, those gay people, those trans people, people from that country, or people who have that religion or whatever, you know, there's something different and scary about them. And then you spend time with them and you're like, oh no, they're just normal.
Well, and that's why it's no surprise why the cities tend to be more liberal and the rural areas tend to be more conservative, because in the rural area you're very isolated. Like I was trying to explain to some conservative dude I knew from like my gaming circles as to why I was liberal, and I'm like, you know, and why, like when it came to religion, like he's like, well, you guys in like New Jersey, you're anti-religious. No, there's tons of religious people here. The difference is we don't talk about it. Because why? The chances are the person next to you on either side of you does not have the same religious beliefs as you. So it's, where do you live? And they were like, oh, whatever it's saying, Podunk, USA. How many churches are there? 3. And like he described the churches, basically 3 variations of the same fucking variety of Christian. So so of course it's not a big deal to talk about religion when everybody in your fucking town, or practically everybody in your town, has basically the same belief system. So I said, but I could just imagine. I said, what if somebody and I said, like, well, if Catholics moved in and they started coming to you and started getting you to trying you to be Catholic, how would you feel? Oh, I'd be uncomfortable. Right, exactly. So so we're here, where the town I grew up in was like 30% Jewish. You know, about 25%, Irish or Italian Catholic, and then the rest was Protestant and other things. You know, a lot of Hindus and Muslims. And so so who wanted to strike up a conversation about religion, because, or certainly not want to proselytize, because you sure as shit didn't want to come and proselytizing at you. So it was a matter of politeness, of saying, hey, let's take that off the table and let's just be people.
Well, and it's also short-sighted. Not even short-sighted, the wrong word. It's just prima facie wrong to assume that there are not religious people in progressive areas, and religious progressive people.
Right.
I mean, one of my best friends up in Massachusetts, she's a devout Christian. She goes to a progressive church, but she's a devout Christian. And a lot of that informs her progressive politics.
I think modern liberalism in the United States was actually born out of a religious revival centered in Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas, especially. So it was basically Christians saying, hey, we say we believe in Jesus, and what are we doing? Like, Jesus said to feed the poor and comfort the afflicted and all this. And what are we doing about that? We're not doing shit. Let's do that.
Yeah, but I want to throw something in, because sometimes actually, when you're talking about these people, you see a sense of cruelty. I don't care, whatever. And I think the reason, in a larger sense, exactly, larger is that they see the world in order versus chaos. It's not right and wrong. It's like order, my group, my position. This is the way I know things. This is the way things are positioned. And the outside, it's chaos. So those other people, they don't fit in. So if I cannot relate to those people, because they're a danger. They're a problem. They will force me to think different ways. They'll force me to accept different things. And that's dangerous, right? Whether it's an immigrant family crossing the border, or a trans person, doing a story hour or whatever, right? To be good is to be in order and lawful and follow the rules, or at least other people follow the rules, not necessarily you. There's always a Karen effect. And to be chaotic is to be outside, you know.
Well,
rolling chaos.
To your point, real quick, something that Tucker Carlson said a few years ago on his show. He basically was trying to attack, multiculturalism, and basically like say, and his point was effectively what you were saying from the right wing view of like, well, when everyone's all the same, we all agree and we just do things, but when everyone's different, it's chaos, and how all these different ideas and people challenging the order and
how awful. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you mean democracy? You mean democracy, Tucker?
You just reminded me something I've thought for years now. Guys like Tucker, they always say, "Oh, this is about like societal cohesion, all the anti-trans stuff." It's just gender policing. They're gonna make it illegal for women to wear pants and for men to wear their hair so long. Men must have short hair, women must have long hair, so on and so on. Because and they'll say that, well, this is what it takes for a society to function. Everyone must fit in their little boxes. And I'm just thinking, if a society is so weak that it can't stand without everybody sitting in those boxes, then it deserves to be defunct. That society deserves to crumble, and a better one rise up in its place.
Yeah. Okay. We're over the hour now, but before I wrap up, Joe has had his hand up forever, and then Geek has his hand up. So Joe, you go first.
Yeah, it calls back to the capitalist ideas versus the capitalist reality, as it were, the Mott and Bailey of that, when people were arguing for the pros of capitalism, that is a competitive system in which, and disguising that for what it actually is, which is a system in which power buys money and money buys power, and the inevitable consolidation that comes with that, and talking about the ideals of when it first came up as a form to break down the powers of the divine rights of kings versus what it is now, which is deciding based on the stacks of money who the next king is, and trying to defend the new form of kingdom versus trying to defend, what it was initially was the process of tearing down the divine right of kings, which there's definitely, like, if you actually look into the history of the beginnings of capitalism and how the fiefdoms became the companies and the lords became the new millionaires, just based off of like, well, now all these people that have lived as serfs now just have to go to debtor's prison, or have to, pay me a similar amount of money, and I own everything, that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's like you forget what the intended result was supposed to be. Like getting rid of the monarchs was supposed to lead to a more egalitarian society where everybody had a stake and everybody had some say in how things are done. And it's like, that's why we wanted to get rid of the kings in the first place. If you're saying, well, yeah, we're still going to not have a king, but we're also not going to have a say in how things are done. Well, then we need to do something else. Like that's no good either.
Well, I think the notion was every white landowner had a say, right?
Yeah, the original. American democracy 1.0. There were a few flaws in that system that we had to iron out.
It's all slave owners that were like the founding fathers were too.
My white landowner could own land.
Rich white landowners that were the only voting populaces were too.
I feel like by that analogy, we're working on MS-DOS 3.1 right now.
Yeah. Like Carl said, the irony of America, is founded by slave owners who wanted to be free.
That's unsold land as well.
Go figure.
People as well. Yeah, go figure. Go ahead.
That goes actually to Steve's recent video, right? There's sort of that economy between, we want freedom for ourselves, but we don't want freedom from anybody else. And that's always there. I mean, you read the Declaration of Independence, you go to second page, it's like, oh, by the way, we have these problems with Native Americans. They're attacking us, and you're not letting us attack them and take their land. Yeah. Bad king. You're a bad king.
We want to kill more of the natives. God damn it.
The freedom to oppress without complaint.
Yes. We want to be the, well, it's what I said in that video. Like we want to, the boot on other people's necks. We want to be able to tell ourselves, well, that's our boot. We don't want to get rid of the boot. We want to put our foot in the boot and say, no, keep the boot.
But right-wing free speech. I get to say what I want, and if you tell me I'm bad, that your speech is telling me that my speech is bad, you're oppressing me.
Exactly.
Well, see, what it's like is it's kind of going back to the whole what anti-Semitism is, and see. Now these Republicans are being woke all of a sudden because it's a demographic that they like that's being oppressed, but when it's someone else, they don't really care.
Oh yeah, Well, here's the thing though, because we gotta remember why right wingers support Israel. So they don't support Jews; they support Israel because the Minionists need Jews to be in Israel so that Jesus can come back and destroy them.
Right.
So they don't. And that's the thing that's the most fucked up to me is like they're hardcore supporters of Israel and they despise Jews.
Yeah,
I never understood that contradiction. Yeah,
it's like DeSantis. DeSantis will talk all the day long about how much we got to support Jews and all this and all that, but then this guy says absolutely nothing when there's like neo-Nazis with like his face on like white on like altered, swastika flags, like
because he likes that.
Yeah, it's like you know who neo-Nazis really hate, right? I'm just saying. Anyway, go for it, Geek.
One other point back to the conversation of how if you don't know a person, then like you can't sympathize with a person. That can also happen parasocially, which is why representation matters, and this is why all the right wingers and reactionaries hate representation because it's getting woke and they're getting woke politics, and just want to enter that as well too, add that to the conversation. But then the actual final point to us,
that's a very astute point though.
Well, and here's the thing that's really messed up about that. It's true. Everything you said is totally true. What's really messed up is that even in circles of people that are nominally on the left, I still see it, especially with men. And I saw on NerdTube recently, they were talking about the backlash against, like just say the Marvels. The Marvels, there's a lot of backlash. We have 3 women. Of course, there's a movie with 3 male characters, no one blinks an eye.
Yeah.
And again, these are the guys I like those guys in NerdTube in their end. Penny's a leftist. But they were basically talking about the backlash and kind of on the side of the backlash. I'm like, they're telling us. I'm like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? And basically projecting they're saying, women. No, they're not. They're just, it's a film and there's 3 fucking women in charge. And you're bent out of shape about it. And when Penny said, it's a male dominated thing, right? And that's a bad fucking thing. That's
right.
Not a good thing.
It doesn't have to be. It shouldn't be.
Every time women show up, it's male dominated. Because every time women show up, men fucking throw a fit. That's not good.
And also the thing, I'll piggyback on that, and then I swear to God, I'm ending this show. But the bit about the Marvels and the backlash, it's not just because the same thing has happened in the past to female-led movies, specifically female-led movies, but really anytime a movie comes out that gets a little bit of a push behind it, that has a minority actor in the starring role or whatever, the movie has to do good, or the entire idea of having women in movies is under attack, right? Like, it's not just the Marvels didn't do as well at the box office as Disney was hoping it would. Okay, lots of movies underperform at the box office. I don't even know how
did a movie and then they never had another Italian again.
Exactly. It's like, how many times have male-led movies underperformed at the box office? You can't even count. It's thousands and thousands. It happens all the time. But when it's the Marvel movie with 3 women in the lead and 2 of them are people of color, and it's people didn't like it. I guess they don't like seeing women in movies. We better not do that. It's like, no,
and they said nothing. They'll say nothing about Thor Into Darkness, even though that vastly underperformed.
I mean, Christ, the new Mission Impossible movie underperformed this year. I mean, it still made a ton of money, but it wasn't like the epoch-shaking blockbuster that people expected it to be. I mean,
it'd only be 200 million, not 300 million.
But and it's like I'm pretty sure Tom Cruise is still going to get financing for his next movie. You know what I mean?
Maybe
like nobody's saying like
go to the movies anymore.
Scorsese's film flopped. The Artur with this fucking cinema. Marvel's not cinema. Well, you're fucking cinema piece of shit fucking flop. But Martin Scorsese says tomorrow I want to make a big budget thing. He's gonna get the fucking money.
And he should. But I mean,
I don't think so.
I did just watch the video for the original video for Michael Jackson's Bad for the first time in probably 15 years.
that Scorsese directed. Yeah.
And wow, that is a bonkers video.
Oh my God. Yes. Because it's like a normal little film up until a certain point.
It's in color and nothing makes sense.
And it goes nuts. It's like, wait a minute. Okay, is this really happening, or is this like a fantasy?
Like Scorsese signed off at that point.
Yeah, Scorsese. Okay, and now the music starts, and somebody else can do it.
Yeah.
It's also a remake, by the way. People don't realize that's kind of a remake. A video is a remake of an earlier Michael Jackson movie.
Really?
Yeah, because it's a whole gang thing. Except now, in the first video, Michael Jackson was trying to stop the gangs from fighting. In Bad, he becomes the leader of the gang. That's the difference. That's it.
The Michael Jackson gang duology.
So it's a gang of zombies? Is that what it is?
The gang of zombies. No, he joined the zombies too. Remember?
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, so I guess I'm missing what other video are you referring to then between Bad and
Beat It?
Was it Beat It? Yeah.
Oh yeah, Beat It. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the gang becomes zombies.
The song,
and the gang becomes zombies and terrible. Yes.
The song that he stole from Weird Al Yankovic.
So what we learned is that Michael Jackson was just a joiner.
Yes, he was.
That's definitely how time works.
Yes. Anyway, quickly remember CharityLinks.page. I put the links for specifically for Phoenix and Joey and Joanna. I mentioned the Phoenix. I will try to mention their links as well, because they have bills piling up. They can afford cat litter, and their cat Archie peed on the carpet as well too. So it's just speaking of capitalism as well. Please, if you have extra money, give money to Phoenix, give money to Joey. They really need it. Extra $100 you can give money to Joanna as well too. Pick your favorite poor person to give money to, because they need that money in order to survive. And Steve, what do you have coming up on your YouTube channel this week that we can look forward to?
Oh boy, I have tomorrow is a funny video. I have another skit going up tomorrow that is a parody of a Siskel and Ebert type movie review show where they're reviewing the movie Saltburn, and one of the critics kind of has his brain broken by a certain scene in the movie. So that'll be fun, hopefully. And it'll be really, it'll be funny if you haven't seen Saltburn, but it'll be really funny if you have seen Saltburn. And then on Wednesday is another Trek Actually comment responses video where I respond to people who have left comments on the 4 or 5 most recent Trek Actually videos that I've put up. So that'll be fun. And then, of course, on Wednesday is also myself and Dana doing another Trek Reluctantly live stream watch along, where we will be watching one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine, The Ship. Great goddamn episode.
Ship's good.
And I think this coming week, I'm also going to try to have the first volume of the Stuffy and Friends Shorts Omnibus ready to go. So I'll have the first year of the Stuffy and Friends shorts edited into a single video with some new stuff interspersed in between. And that'll be up. Hopefully, I'm aiming for Thursday. If not Thursday, then Friday. And also before we wrap it up, not related to my YouTube stuff or anything, but shout out to the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. Went back to back last night at the Royal Rumble. My favorite wrestler won the Rumble. So everything else about the business area of WWE is a complete fucking nightmare. And we all now we have yet another example of why Vince McMahon was a horrible monster man. who should be in prison. I mean, it's nice. It's nice that he's being sued and everything, and hopefully the woman suing him for these horrible things that he allegedly did to her will win every penny she's asking for. That's great. I hope that happens. But also, he should be in prison.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah. I just saw that meme with the ever increasing lustfulness of Vince McMahon.
Yes.
And man, that hits different.
Yeah, it's not good. A lot of stuff that Vince did on TV over the last 30 years hits different when you realize what a perverted piece of shit he was in real life. But all that aside, good Rumble last night. My man Cody won. So, we'll accentuate the positive. And also hopefully permanently now Vince is no longer part of the company because they finally had no choice but to kick his fucking ass out.
I just want to plug. I don't remember if last time if I had mentioned about live streaming. Did I do that?
I think you had mentioned it. Yeah.
So I actually I'm starting to get myself put together, and so watch that space. Watch this space too because it's Steve and it's awesome. But watch my space.
Watch his space. Yeah.
Watch this, and because I will be doing that rather soon. I'm gonna try to start.
Awesome.
I want to start doing it regularly, because I find that's. And it's weird. You would think
it's somehow therapeutic to just yell into the camera and yell into the void and have people watch you.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's weird because you would think recording a video and doing it, but what's the difference, right? You're just talking to a camera. But I think there's something about the immediacy that you're live.
Yeah.
That it just totally changes your character.
We're doing live.
Exactly. And I don't know why it's different for me, but I stammer a lot more when I'm filming, when I'm recording than when I'm online. Weird.
It's the opposite theater kid. I can totally relate, honestly. But yeah, Serious Mind is the YouTube channel is linked in the live chat as well. So there you go. All the plugs have been done. So now we can end the show. Definitely.
Now we can end the show, and that's what I'm doing right now. Everybody,
goodbye,
everybody, shut up. We're ending this show. Thank you all. In all seriousness, thanks to everybody who is here with me on the show because all of these people are patrons or channel members, and they've most of them have supported my channel for a very long time, and I could not do this without all of them and all of you watching as well who are patrons and members. So thank you to those of you who are supporters and have been, and if you're watching this or you enjoy what I do on YouTube and you're thinking about it, patreon.com/Steve Shives or click the join button to become a channel member. Really helps me out, helps me to continue doing what I do. So, and we do this once a month with patrons and members just as a way to, kind of for me to say thank you and for me to hang out with some of the people who I've gotten to know over the years who
February 25th is the next member hangout.
There we go.
That's 4 weeks from now because February is a short month anyway, but this one's 29 days. But anyway, 4 weeks from now is the next one.
Last Sunday of the month is when we always try to do it. So okay, February 25th. See everybody then. Thanks for watching. Take care and bye-bye.
All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.